Every frame you notice, every story that holds you, every idea that moves culture, there's a system behind it. This is EMPath, hosted by Carolyn DeClue and Bo DeClue, where story meets strategy and creative careers are built with intention. New episodes every Wednesday at 7 a.m. EMPath. Feel the creativity.
This is EMPath. I'm Carolyn DeClue.
And I'm Bo DeClue.
Feel the creativity.
This episode's brought to you by Neon Alchemy. Story is how companies become human. We handle that part. Link in the show notes.
New episodes every Wednesday at 7 a.m. Find us wherever you listen.
Last week we ended on a question, and I want to pick it right back up. We spent the whole episode talking about automation giving creatives their time back. And the question we left hanging was, what do you actually do with that time?
And here's the uncomfortable follow-up. We're living in the most tool-rich, efficiency-obsessed moment in the history of creative work. We've automated, streamlined, optimized more than ever before, and now people are more exhausted than they've ever been.
Which makes no sense on paper. More efficiency was supposed to mean more breathing room. Instead, the breathing room keeps disappearing.
The numbers on this are startling. In the creative sector, media, marketing, design, all of it, roughly 7 in 10 professionals reported burnout in the last year. 7 in 10. That's not a struggling minority. That's most of an entire industry hitting a wall.
And the part that gets me is that these are people who love what they do. That's the cruel thing about creative burnout specifically. It isn't happening to people who hate their jobs and are clock watching till they can leave.
It's the opposite. It's happening to the people who care the most, the ones who go into the business because they love making things. That's who burns out. And that tells you something important about what's actually going wrong.
Because if the people who love the work are the ones breaking, the work itself isn't the problem.
The work was never the problem. People don't burn out from making things they love. They burn out from everything piled on top of the making. The bureaucracy, endless approvals, the politics, the meetings about the meetings, the structure around the creativity that slowly chokes the creativity out of it.
So that's the episode. We're treating burnout as what it actually is. Not a willpower problem. Not you need a vacation problem.
A design problem. The systems creative people work inside were built to maximize output. They were hardly ever designed with the human being in mind, and you can fix that. You can design structure that protects creativity instead of strangling it. That's the whole conversation today.
We've got a new invisible move pulled straight from the world of learning and teaching. A career strategy segment about building a creative life you can actually survive long term. And part 2 of my conversation with Dustin Power.
The work's supposed to be the thing that lights you up. Let's talk about how to keep it that way.
Let's get into it.
You're listening to EMPath, where creativity meets strategy and the work stays worth doing. What's draining the people who love this work? What's quietly fixing it? What actually keeps a team whole? This is Industry Pulse.
I want to start with the thing nobody wants to hear because it's what actually matters. The standard advice for burnout doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work changes how you fix it.
The standard advice being take a break, use your PTO, practice self-care.
All of it. And none of it's wrong exactly. Rest is good. People should take their time off, and they shouldn't feel an ounce of guilt for doing it.
But they do. Almost everyone does.
And that's the part to look at. The PTO exists. It's right there in the benefits package. But the structure around requesting it is designed in a way that makes people feel guilty for using the thing they were promised. You have to justify it. You have to find your own coverage. You feel the silent math of who's going to resent you for being gone. By the time you've navigated all of that, the rest you were owed comes with a tax of stress and guilt attached.
So the benefit is real, and the design around the benefit quietly cancels it out.
And it's the whole problem in miniature. Nobody decided, let's make people feel bad for resting. It just accumulated that way because the system was designed around protecting coverage and workflow, not around the human being who actually needs a break. Redesign the request process so taking your time off is normal, expected, guilt-free, and you fix something real. The rest only works if the path doesn't drain you first.
You shouldn't have to recover from asking for your recovery.
Right, and here's the bigger point underneath it. Because this isn't only about PTO. Look at what the data is actually showing in 2026. It's striking. The industry keeps responding to burnout with rest, and the burnout keeps coming back. People take the vacation, feel better for a week, and then slide right back into the same exhaustion.
Because they're walking back into the exact same situation that wore them down in the first place.
That's the whole thing. If rest fixed burnout, burnout would be fixed. People take breaks. The problem isn't a shortage of rest. The problem is what they're resting from and what they're returning to.
So you can't sleep your way out of a broken system.
And here's the thing I want people to actually walk away with, because it changes everything about how you respond. Burnout isn't a willpower problem. It isn't a personal weakness. It isn't a sign that you're not tough enough for the industry. It's a design problem.
Unpack that, because design problem is going to sound abstract to someone who's just tired.
Here's what I mean. Every creative works inside a structure. a set of processes, approvals, timelines, communication norms, expectations. That structure was designed by someone at some point for some purpose. And almost always, that purpose was productivity. Get more out of the door faster. Which means the structure was optimized for the work. It was almost never optimized for the people doing the work. Those are two different design goals, and most systems only ever pursued the first one.
And when you optimize purely for output, the people become a resource you spend.
Until there's nothing left. And the system doesn't even notice what's happening because the system was never watching the human in the first place. It was watching the deliverables.
This tracks with everything I've seen on the production side. The schedule gets built around what the project needs, almost never around what the crew can actually sustain. And there's this unspoken assumption baked into the whole thing. This tracks with everything I've seen on the production side. The schedule gets built around what the project needs, almost never around what the crew can actually sustain. And there's this unspoken assumption baked into the whole thing, that the people will just absorb whatever the structure can't account for.
That's the hidden clause in almost every creative workflow. The humans will make up the difference. The timeline's too tight? The people will eat the stress. The approval process is a mess? The people will absorb the chaos. The structure has a gap. A person quietly fills it with their own well-being.
And the people who fill those gaps are usually the ones who care the most.
Which is why your best people burn out first. It's not random. The system rewards the behavior that's destroying them. The person who absorbs the most dysfunction looks like the most dedicated, right up until they break.
So let's get specific about what's actually in the structure that does the damage, because I don't think it's the creative work itself.
It's never the creative work. Ask anyone in this field what part of their job they'd happily do for free, and they'll describe the actual making. The designing, the writing, the editing, the building, the part that actually feeds them. That's why they're here. What drains them is everything wrapped around it. The bureaucracy, 7 layers of approval for a decision that needed 1. The politics, managing egos, navigating who's allowed to say what to whom. The status meetings that exist to make someone feel in control. The endless context switching. The sense that you're spending more energy reporting on the work than actually doing it.
The work is the part you love. The wrapper is the part that's killing you.
And the cruel part is that the wrapper gets presented as necessary, as just how it works. As the grown-up part of the job you have to tolerate to get to the fun part. And a lot of it isn't necessary. A lot of it's bureaucracy that accumulated because nobody ever stopped to ask whether it was even serving anyone.
So if it's a design problem, it's got a design solution. That's the hopeful part.
And it's why I care about this so much. A design problem is fixable. You're not asking people to become more resilient. You're not asking them to want it more. You're changing the structure so it stops doing the damage in the first place. And here's the principle underneath it. You build the human into the design from the start. Not as an afterthought, not as a wellness perk bolted on the side. The team's mental and emotional health become one of the things that the structure is actually responsible for protecting, right alongside the deadline and the budget.
So instead of a process that only asks, how do we get the most output? It also asks, how do we get this done in a way that people can actually sustain?
Both questions held at the same time. That's the change. And when you design that way, something counterintuitive happens. The work usually gets better because people who aren't running on empty make better decisions. They have the spare capacity to care about the details. They catch the things exhausted people miss.
Protecting the people and protecting the work turn out to be the same project.
They were always the same. We just built an industry that treated them like opposites. Like caring about the humans was something you did instead of caring about the output, when actually it's how you protect the output long term. So that's the frame for today. Burnout isn't a personal failing you fix with a long weekend. It's a structural problem you fix by designing structure that supports the creativity instead of suffocating it. And we're going to get practical about exactly how you do that.
Because the people who love this work deserve a system that loves them back.
And that's the whole idea.
Burnout isn't a willpower problem, it's a design problem, and design problems can be solved. This is EMPath. The tools you use shape the work you create, so what's actually protecting the team, and what's quietly grinding them down? This is Deep Dive, Tools and Workflow.
We spent Industry Pulse making the case that burnout is a structural problem. So now I want to get into the structure itself, because there's a specific category of tool that's supposed to help creative teams work better, and depending on how it's used, it either does exactly that, or becomes one of the main things wearing people down. Frameworks, project management systems, process structures, the scaffolding around the creative work.
I've worked on productions where the system was the thing that kept everyone sane. A clear process, everyone knows what they're responsible for, nothing falls through the cracks. That's useful.
The tool itself isn't the problem. The problem is what the tool was designed to track. Take something like Waterfall, one of the most widely used project management frameworks in creative and tech work. It's a linear process. You complete phase 1 before you move to phase 2. Requirements, design, build, test, deliver. Clean, logical, sequential.
And on paper, it sounds exactly like what a chaotic creative project needs.
It does, and for a certain kind of work, it helps. But here's what Waterfall was built to track. Output. completion of phases, movement through the sequences. What it has no mechanism for is the human experience of moving through the sequence. How's the team doing in week 6 of a 10-week build phase? Is anyone running on empty? Has the scope quietly expanded while the timeline stayed the same? The framework doesn't ask, so nobody asks.
Until someone breaks, and then it gets addressed in the most expensive possible way.
Same thing happens with ADDIE, which is the classic instructional design framework. Analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation. It's been the backbone of learning and training design for decades, and for good reason. It's thorough, it's structured, it makes sure nothing gets skipped.
Is there a but in there?
But ADDIE, as it's traditionally applied, is almost entirely output-focused. Did we complete the analysis? Did we produce the design document? Did the module get built and delivered on time? Those are the questions the framework is set up to answer. What it doesn't ask: how's the instructional designer doing after 6 weeks in development? Is the subject matter expert being asked to review 17 modules in 2 days? Is anyone on this team still creatively engaged, or are they just hitting checkboxes?
The framework tracks the deliverables, not the people producing them.
And here's the pattern I see over and over. A team adopts a framework because things feel chaotic and they need structure. The framework works. Chaos reduces. The project moves forward. And then quietly, over weeks and months, the framework becomes the point. Hitting the milestones becomes the measure of success, and the humans inside the system start bending themselves to fit the process instead of the process fitting them.
The tool stops serving the team, and the team starts serving the tool.
Which is the trap. And it happens without anyone deciding it. Nobody sits down and says, let's make the framework more important than the people. It just drifts that way because the framework is visible, and the people's well-being isn't. The deadline is on the board, the exhaustion isn't.
On a film set, this shows up as schedule creep meets crew silence. The schedule is running hot, people are tired, but nobody says anything because the system doesn't have a lane for "I'm not okay." You push through, you finish, and then half the crew swears they'll never work with that producer again.
And the producer often has no idea. They hit the deliverables. In their version of the events, the project was a success.
Because the system told them it was.
Because the system was only watching the deliverables. So the fix isn't to throw out Waterfall or ADDIE or whatever framework your team runs on. The fix is to add a second thread to it. One that runs alongside the output thread and watches the humans. Check-ins that aren't status updates, that actually ask how people are doing and mean it. Realignment moments build into the process where the team can say, this isn't working, before it becomes a crisis. Spacing built in deliberately, so there's room for people to think, to recover, to bring their full selves to the hard parts.
The last one is the one that gets cut first when the schedule gets tight.
Always, and it's the one that costs the most when it's gone. Because spacing isn't slack. It's the room where the good decisions get made. The room where someone catches the problem before it ships. The room where a creative person does the unexpected thing that makes the work better than the brief. Cut that room out, and you don't just lose rest. You lose the quality that was living there.
So you're not softening the process, you're completing it.
That's exactly it. An output thread and a human thread running together. The output thread handles what it's always handled. Milestones, deliverables, timelines. The human thread asks whether the people inside the process are okay, whether the pace is sustainable, whether anyone needs to call something out before it gets worse. Both threads treated as equally real.
And when both are present, something changes in the room. People aren't just executing. They feel like the system is actually aware they exist, which sounds like a small thing.
But when people feel like the structure sees them, not just their output, they work differently. They flag problems earlier. They take the creative risks that make work interesting instead of just delivering the safe version. And they stay.
The best crews I've worked with had that quality. You could feel it. The structure was holding the project and the people. Nobody was being sacrificed to the schedule.
And the work shows it. So, tool or trap for frameworks and PM systems? The answer is both, and the difference is whether the system has a human thread running through it or not. Without it, you've got a highly efficient machine for burning people out. With it, you've got the thing that it was always supposed to be, a structure that makes work better because it makes the people okay. Quick one. The best creative system isn't the one that gets the most out of the people. It's the one people can stay inside of.
If you found this show, you're probably not someone who needs to be convinced that creativity matters. You already know that. What you might need, and what Carol and I try to give you every single week, is the stuff that sits underneath the craft, the workflow decisions, the career architecture, the industry patterns that are usually only passed down in private conversations between people who've been around long enough to know. We cover film, animation, design, gaming, advertising, writing, and digital media. Not surface level. We go into it. Every Wednesday at 7 a.m. New episodes drop wherever you listen. If today's the first episode you've caught, welcome. Go back and start from episode 1. You'll want the full picture. EMPath. Feel the creativity. Coming up, the invisible move, a principle from the world of learning design that quietly underpins every great onboarding, every good mentor, and every game tutorial you've ever loved without knowing why.
Stay with us.
You felt supported, you grew, you didn't notice how it happened. This is the invisible move.
There's a principle in instructional design that's widely used, and once you understand it, you start seeing it in places that have nothing to do with training. Today's invisible move is scaffolding.
Which I know as a physical thing. The temporary structure you put up around a building while it's being constructed comes down when the building can't hold itself.
That's exactly the metaphor, and it's not accidental. In instructional design, scaffolding is the temporary support you build around a learner while they're developing a skill. It holds them up while they're not yet strong enough to hold themselves. And then, and this is the part that makes it invisible, as they grow more capable, you remove it. Gradually, deliberately, until they're standing on their own.
And the learner doesn't feel the removal.
That's the whole art of it. When scaffolding is done well, the learner doesn't experience, my support structure was taken away. They experience, I did that myself. The confidence is real. The capability is real. They did do it themselves. The scaffold just created the conditions where that was possible.
That's a beautiful design move. You're engineering someone's sense of their own competence.
In the best possible way. You're not tricking them. You're building them up in a way that feels from the inside like their own growth, which it is. The scaffold didn't do the learning. They did. The scaffold just made sure they didn't fall while they were figuring it out.
And this shows up in ways people never label as scaffolding. Think about onboarding. The difference between good onboarding and bad onboarding is almost entirely a scaffolding problem. Bad onboarding throws someone into the deep end and hopes they swim. Good onboarding builds a temporary structure around them. Here's who to ask, here's the simplified version first, here's a reduced scope project to start, and then systematically removes those supports as the person finds their footing.
Mentorship is scaffolding. A good mentor doesn't do the work for you and doesn't abandon you to figure it out alone. They build a structure around your development that gives you just enough support to do the hard thing, and they keep adjusting that structure as you grow. The goal of a mentor is to make themselves unnecessary, which is the goal of all good scaffolding.
Game tutorials are textbook scaffolding. The first level of almost any well-designed game is teaching you how to play without ever saying, here are the rules. It gives you a simple version of the mechanic, lets you succeed at it, then introduces complexity slowly. By the time you're in the hard levels, you've been scaffolded into competence without realizing you were being taught.
And this is why so many corporate training programs fail, by the way. They skip the scaffold entirely. Here's all the information at once. Here's the full policy manual. Here's the complete system training in one session. No structure built around the learner, no graduated complexity, no room to develop confidence before the full weight of the thing lands on them.
And the result is people who technically receive the training and don't actually know how to do anything.
Because information without scaffolding isn't learning, it's just exposure. The scaffold is what turns exposure into actual capability. Like Merrill's first principles of instruction, it's I do, we do, you do.
In directing, this is something I think about a lot with newer crew members. A good director doesn't just assign someone a hard task and walk away. You give them the task at a level they can handle, you're available when they need you, you reduce the stakes enough that they can actually try, and then you raise the bar as they prove they can carry it. You're building their confidence and their capability at the same time.
And the measure of whether you did it well is exactly what we said at the start. They don't walk away thinking, I was carried through that. They walk away thinking, I actually did that. The scaffold was invisible, the growth was real.
So how do you actually apply this? Because I think people are hearing this and thinking about their teams, their reports, their own development.
A few ways to hold it practically. First, when you're bringing someone into something new, ask yourself what the minimum viable version of this task is. Not the dumbed down version, the version that's real enough to matter and contained enough to succeed at. That's your first scaffold. Second, build in moments where you're available without hovering. The learner needs to know help exists without feeling watched. Third, this is the one that most people skip. Notice when the scaffold is no longer needed and let it go. Holding on too long is its own problem. It signals that you don't trust the person's growth, and it prevents them from finding out what they're actually capable of.
The scaffold that stays too long stops being support and starts being a ceiling.
That's the failure mode on the other end. You designed something to be temporary and forgot to take it down, and now someone capable is working inside of a structure that's smaller than they are. And here's why this belongs in an episode about burnout and structure. Scaffolding is what compassionate design looks like in a practice when it's pointed at development. It's a structure that's aware of the human inside. It adjusts to where that person actually is, not where the system assumes they should be. It supports without crushing. It challenges without abandoning. It's designed to make itself unnecessary. That's what it looks like when a structure actually loves the people inside it.
Build people up until the structure's not needed, then get out of the way.
That's the invisible move.
Better systems don't just shape the process, they shape the people inside it. This is EMPath. Creative work doesn't build careers. Direction does. This is career strategy.
Everything we've talked about today, the burnout, the broken systems, the frameworks that were never watching the humans, I want to bring it all down to the most personal level, because you can understand the structural problem perfectly and still be living inside one that's slowly taking you apart. So this is the career conversation, not how to get ahead, but how to stay in.
Which is actually the harder thing to talk about. Getting ahead has a whole industry of advice. Staying sane, doing it for 30 years, that conversation is much more rare.
It's the one that matters more in the long run, though. Because here's what I've watched happen to talented people in this industry over and over. They come in burning, passionate, capable, willing to do whatever it takes. And the industry hands them a story about what it's supposed to look like. Work the long hours, take everything that comes, say yes to everything, prove yourself, and be resilient.
And for a while it works, or looks like it works.
For a while it actually looks like success. And then year 5 or year 7 or year 10 hits, and something's gone. The passion that was driving everything has quietly run out, and they're still working, still producing, but they're doing it on empty, going through the motions of a career they used to love.
And from the outside, it can still look fine. The work's still getting done.
But ask them what they're making and they'll describe the last 3 projects almost identically. Ask them what excites them and they'll pause a beat too long before they answer. The light's gone out, and the terrible part is that most people in that position blame themselves. They think they've changed. They think they lost something that was theirs to keep.
When actually, the system ate it.
Slowly, over years, through 1,000 small surrenders that each felt reasonable at the time. And the fix the industry offers is resilience. Get tougher, develop a thicker skin, learn to detach. And I want to push back on that hard because I think it's exactly the wrong answer.
Why the wrong answer?
Because resilience puts the problem back on the person. It says the system is what it is and your job is to become strong enough to survive it. And there's a version of that that's useful. You do have to be able to handle the hard things, but when resilience becomes the whole answer, you end up spending your career trying to be tougher than the system that's wearing you down. And eventually, because you're a human being and not a machine, the system wins.
It's a losing strategy long term.
It's optimizing for survival instead of sustainability. And those are different things. Survival is getting through. Sustainability is building something you can keep doing and keep loving for decades. And people who actually pull that off, the ones still creating at full power 30, 40, 50 years in, they didn't just get tougher. They designed the relationship to the work in a way that protected it. And here's the thing. People already know this, even if they haven't put words to it yet. Because they're leaving. In the creative sector, the move towards freelancing and independent work isn't just a lifestyle preference. It's a structural response to broken systems. Over 60% of people who go freelance do it by choice. And when you ask them why, flexibility is almost always the answer. But flexibility is just another word for control. Control over their time, their workload, their creative direction, and the conditions they work inside of.
They're not leaving the work. They're leaving the wrapper.
The U.S. freelance workforce hit nearly 73 million people in 2025. That's not a trend. That's a mass departure from structures that weren't designed for the humans inside them. And the cruel irony is that the companies they're leaving now are hiring them back as freelancers, paying more, getting the same skills because they need specialized talent that they let walk out the door.
The system lost the people it was supposed to serve and then had to pay a premium to get them back on different terms.
Different terms which the people design themselves, which is the whole point. When the existing structure doesn't work for you, you build the one that does. Different terms which people design themselves, which is the whole point. When the existing structure doesn't work for you, you build the one that does. That's what going independent is at its core. It's a design decision. And you don't have to go freelance to make that decision, but you do have to decide that the structure of your career is something you're responsible for designing, not something that just happens to you while you're busy trying to do good work.
So what does that design actually look like? Because that's a good idea.
A few things, and they all connect. The first is knowing your depletion signature. Every creative has a specific way the work drains them when the conditions are wrong. For some people, it's context switching. Moving between too many projects destroys their creative depth. For others, it's collaboration overhead. Too many stakeholders in the room and the work gets watered down until they don't recognize it. For others, it's the approval cycle. Waiting for sign-off while momentum dies. Whatever your specific signature is, you need to know it because it's the thing that'll quietly hollow you out if the structure around you keeps triggering it.
And most people don't know it until they're already depleted.
Because you usually don't think about what drains you until you're already running low. So the practice is to start noticing earlier. Not just, I'm tired, but I'm tired because, what's the actual condition that produced this? The more specifically you can answer that, the more precisely you can design against it.
What's the second thing?
Structural boundaries rather than personal ones. Most career advice about sustainability talks about personal boundaries. Say no more, protect your time, and that's true as far as it goes. But personal boundaries are exhausting to maintain because they require you to make a new decision every single time something comes at you. Should I take this? Should I say no to that? Structural boundaries take the decision out of it. You decide once, at the system level, and the structure enforces it for you. The day where you don't take meetings, a project limit you don't go above, a type of work you decided isn't yours to take anymore. These aren't decisions you make in the moment under pressure. They're decisions you made earlier, in a clear head, and built into how you operate.
So instead of needing to be strong enough to say no every time, the structure says no for you.
And you preserve your energy for the work instead of spending it constantly defending your capacity. It's the same principle we talked about in Deep Dive. You're adding the human thread to your own system. You're building yourself into the design.
The third thing?
Protect the part of the work that feeds you. This sounds obvious, and it's the first thing people let go of when they get busy. Every creative has some part of what they do that isn't about the deadline, isn't about the client, isn't about what anyone else needs. The making that's purely theirs, the experiment nobody asked for, the project that exists because they needed to make it. That part is the root system. It's what everything else grows from. And when you cut it, because you're too busy, because it doesn't pay, because there's always something more urgent, you don't notice the damage right away. But 6 months later, you're producing technically correct work that doesn't feel like yours anymore. The root dried up and you didn't see it happening.
I've felt that before. There have been stretches on long productions where I've gone months without doing anything purely for myself. And by the end, I can feel the difference. I'm still capable, but something's thinner.
That's exactly it. And the mistake is thinking you'll get back to it when things slow down. Things don't slow down. You have to protect the part of the work with the same seriousness you protect a deadline. Put it in the calendar. Treat it as non-negotiable. Not because it's productivity hacked, because it's the thing that keeps you a creative person and not just a production machine.
Anything else?
Build your recovery into the structure, not the gaps. Most people's approach to recovery is opportunistic. I'll rest when there's space. But space doesn't appear. It has to be designed in, which means recovery, real recovery, not just the absence of work, is something you schedule, something you protect, something the structure around your week makes room for on purpose and not by accident.
And the recovery has to actually be recovery. It can't be catching up on the things you didn't do during the work week. That's just more work with a different label.
True recovery is the thing that doesn't produce anything, that doesn't optimize for anything, that exists purely to let the human inside the creative be a human for a while. And when you come back from that, you come back with something that wasn't there before. Ideas, yes, but more than that, a kind of aliveness that the work was waiting for.
So put it all together. What does a career you can survive actually look like?
It looks like someone who knows what depletes them and has built their work life to minimize that, who's made structural decisions, not personal ones in the moment, that protect their capacity before it runs out, who's kept the making that's purely theirs alive even when it's not convenient, and who's built recovery in deliberately so they're not running on empty by default. It doesn't look like someone who got tougher than the industry. It looks like someone who designed their relationship to it carefully enough that they didn't have to.
A career that was built for a human to live inside of.
The work you love deserves a structure that lets you keep loving it, for the long run.
The work matters, so does the person doing it. This is EMPath. Behind the work, there are real people building it. This is Industry Voice.
Welcome back to part 2. Last week, Dustin Power walked us through how Automistic works, where the idea came from, and why a person who loves creative work would spend years building automation infrastructure. If you haven't heard part 1, go back to episode 3 first. This conversation picks up right where we left off. Today, we get into the harder questions, where the line actually sits between what a machine should handle and what has to stay in human hands. What happens when you hand creative teams their time back and they're not sure what to do with it? And the one tool Dustin thinks is underrated that almost nobody's talking about enough. Part 2. Let's finish this. Automistic promises teams 95% of their production time back. That's a bold number. And where does the other 5% go?
Yeah, so the other 5% goes towards instances where the pipeline is not designed to handle, a certain custom request. For example, we're working with Hot Wheels live show right now. So let's say a venue wants to have a shot of a drone shot of their venue in the TV commercial. So the system currently is not designed to handle that. So that would be a part of the 5% that would actually be necessary for the internal creative teams to do.
Okay.
They'd still be able to run the whole project through Automistic, where it would do the venues and the dates and the voiceover and the sponsor logos and everything. But they would be provided working files. And in those working files, they can go and make those custom requests.
There's a version of automation that flattens creative work. everything starts looking the same because it's all running through the same templates. How do you guard against that?
Typically, with a lot of these touring shows, what they do is they refresh their creative assets every year. And that is really, really where you see the new content. So every year, like, this year, Hot Wheels is doing Glow and Fire. And then next year, they're doing a new type of show where the whole TV commercial is going to look different and everything. But the text and the sponsors and everything are all going to be the same. But the creative assets are swapped out on a regular basis to keep things fresh.
What's the most creatively complex automation problem that you've had to solve? The one that made you think,
For the past, I would say 15 years I've been working with Adobe. I've been doing Premiere Pro, Photoshop, After Effects, Illustrator, Audition. That's just been my ecosystem, and that's, been my bread and butter. Whenever we started building Automistic, there was the default assumption that we're going to use After Effects because After Effects has really great scripting. And that was actually one of my first kind of introduction into automation was a script called Comps from Spreadsheet. So that really planted the seed of Automistic because I'm like, what if we could do that and, crank it up to 11?
Right.
Back to your question is like, what was the most complex part of the automation? So the audio software inside of After Effects is not very good at all. It's not made to be any kind of editing of audio at all.
Right.
It's if you use any kind of audio in After Effects, you would know. Basically, there's no pitch correction. So if you have, a venue and date voiceover and the venue name is really long and you only have, 3 seconds for the actual voice, if you try to shrink it, it's going to sound like Alvin the Chipmunks reading the venue and date, and it's going to be awful. So, we played around with all these different, ideas and concepts, and we even tried creating our own plugins for After Effects to fix that issue.
Wow.
But the issue was so deeply embedded in the software that we had to take a step back and actually look at, are there other alternatives? So we did some brainstorming, and we finally went on to DaVinci Resolve and download the studio version to be able to utilize the scripting. And that's been a complete game changer. Like DaVinci Resolve Studio is absolutely incredible because it's got, your video editing. It's got motion graphics with diffusion. It has fantastic audio mixing capabilities. So it's like an all-in-one package. The most difficult part was transitioning away from Adobe into DaVinci and getting that up and running with our system. But once we did, we were really glad we did it.
A lot of creatives hear the word automation and feel threatened. What do you say to those people?
What I say to those people is I get the fear, having technology possibly take somebody's job is scary. It's like, I've worried about AI for many years now, like what it can actually do and the jobs that it might take. But if you utilize AI to help you in your processes, you'll see how much benefit there is to it. I think there's like anything in life, there's a balance. If you use the tools that are available to you in life, I feel like you have a higher chance of success.
Where do you see the line between what automation should handle and what should always stay in human hands?
Humans should always be in control of creative content. I feel there should always be human hands and eyes involved in the creation process for, if you're generating something, you don't want to like generate an ad and put it out there without looking at it, making edits to it and stuff,
You're essentially selling time back to creative teams, but creative people are notoriously bad at knowing what to do with that extra time. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that play out with clients?
People that are seeking automation are really, really overloaded with the amount of work they have. They're looking for a solution for a reason, so the issues that a lot of these teams are having is they have so many different variations of these different spots where they need to go into all these templates and all these project files. It's a good problem to have too much free time, you know?
Right.
And whenever creatives get that free time back, if they're responsible, they're learning new skills, they're expanding their craft, they're, watching tutorials, they're catching up on the latest tools and softwares. Yeah, we're trying to solve a problem. That was the main thing. Is like, how do we solve this problem of wasted time in creative spaces? Yeah. And that's really been our mission from the beginning, is to get rid of all this wasted time.
The tools available for video automation in 2026 are significantly more powerful than they were like even 2 years ago. How has that changed what Automistic can offer? And has it changed like your competition or anything?
We're in a pretty niche spot right now where we do exact, direct input to output automation, where there's no AI involved in the actual process of creating your assets. So we don't necessarily have a lot of competition with other companies externally doing that. Some companies use softwares or plugins such as comps from Spreadsheet to take care of some of these automation pipelines that they like to explore. One thing we're exploring now is local text-to-speech translation for TV commercials and social media posts. So we're exploring an agentic local system that actually does the translations in the proper terminology that the tour is going to, like that area uses, and how they would say things properly in that language. Put that back into the video editing software and retime it and reposition it to where you're going to have a ready to go spot just by filling out a little spreadsheet form.
What is a creative tool, not yours, but a creative tool that you think is genuinely underrated and more people should know about?
We talked about DaVinci Resolve already, but I think DaVinci Resolve, with the free aspect of it, where you don't even need to buy the paid version to really have a fantastic video editing app. And it has all you need. It's got it has motion graphics, it's got color, it's got editing, it's got sound mixing. The paid version is even better because you have access to a lot of AI tools where there's like the magic mask, or there's scripting, which you can kind of unlock your own automation systems with.
For the creatives in our audience who are watching automation reshape their industry right now, what's the one thing you want them to actually hear?
Automation is your friend as long as your whole job is not copy and paste. If you're creative, it's on you to make cool stuff. Make things that brands want to see, that people want to see. Learn how to make engaging content and cool cuts and special effects or sound design, whatever it is you specialize in. Find what you like to do and what you're good at, and focus on that. You don't want to be hitting copy and paste all day. It's a terrible job. It sucks. It's a great way to get into companies, but it's not a fulfilling life to do that as a creative. And I think that if you can learn how to harness automation, you're very valuable to agencies and to companies and even people around you.
I've had a good time. Yeah. And
thank you for having me. It's been really cool just to kind of be able to share this and kind of hopefully expand the business a little bit. And really appreciate you giving me the time to do this.
Dustin Power, founder and director of Automistic, Automistic.com. 2 episodes, 1 conversation that needed the room to breathe, and I want to pull one thing out before we move on, because it's been turning over in my head since we recorded. At the end of it all, after everything about pipelines and workflows and what automation can and can't do, he said something that cut right through all of it. Make cool stuff. Understand what you like and what you're good at. Focus on that. That's not a technology answer. That's a human answer. And it's exactly what this whole conversation was pointing toward. The automation clears the path. What you do with the path, that's still entirely yours. Dustin, thank you for both halves of this. It was a great conversation.
The work tells a story. So do the people behind it. This is EMPath. Step back, look again. What changes when the perspective shifts? This is Perspective Reset.
I want to stay with what Dustin said at the end of that conversation. He'd spent 2 episodes talking about pipelines, automation systems, technical infrastructure, and then we asked him what he actually wanted creatives to hear, and he didn't give a technology answer. Make cool stuff. Know what you like and you're good at. Focus on that.
Which is almost shockingly simple, coming from someone who built a company around automating creative production.
And that's exactly why it lands the way it does. He's not someone who doesn't understand the tools. He understands them as well as anyone. He built them. And his answer from that vantage point is, the tools aren't the point. The creativity is the point. Anything else is just infrastructure in service of that.
Which connects directly to everything we've been saying all episode. We spent the whole show talking about burnout and broken systems, and frameworks that forgot the humans inside them. And underneath all of it is the same question. What are we actually protecting?
The creativity. That's what we're protecting. The part that got people into this in the first place. the making, the thing that lights people up. That's the asset. Everything around it, the system, the processes, the workflows, those are supposed to serve that. And when they stop serving it and start suffocating it, something important breaks.
And what I heard in Dustin's answer, the part that's been turning over in my head, is that the people who are okay in an automating world aren't the ones who figured out the best tools. They're the ones who stayed clear about what they actually love making. Because if you know that, the tools are just tools. If you don't know that, the tools become the whole job.
Copy and paste all day, which is exactly what he said he'd been doing before he built the thing that got him out of it. That's what drained the soul out of him. And the fix wasn't a better tool. The fix was getting back to the making.
So the question this episode keeps asking in different ways is, what's the making for you?
Not the deliverable, not the output, not the thing you're paid to produce. The part underneath that, the reason you're in this at all. Because here's what I've seen happen to people who don't have a clear answer to that question. They work hard, they produce a lot, they hit the deadlines, and one day they look up and realize they've spent years building something they don't care about anymore. The work was real, the effort was real, but the connection to what made it matter wasn't protected, and it quietly disappeared somewhere in the middle of all the doing.
And you can't automate your way back from that. No tool fixes it.
That one's entirely human. So here's what I'd leave you with. And it's a small thing, but it matters a lot. At some point this week, not when it's convenient, because it's never convenient. Ask yourself what you'd make if nobody was watching. If there was no brief, no client, no deliverable on the other end, what would you actually make? And if the answer comes fast and clear, that's the root system. Protect it. If the answer takes a while or doesn't come, that's information too. And it means the most important work you've got right now isn't a project. It's figuring that out.
Because everything we talked about today, the structural design, the frameworks, the career sustainability, all of it, it's in service of that answer. You're not building systems for their own sake. You're building systems that protect the space where the real work happens.
Make cool stuff. Know what you love. Focus on that. Dustin said it in 3 sentences. The whole industry's been trying to figure it out for decades.
Sometimes the simplest answer is the one that took the most experience to arrive at.
That's the whole point.
Clarity changes direction. This is EMPath.
That's episode 4. Here's where we went today. We made the case that burnout isn't a personal failing. It's a design problem, and design problems have design solutions. We got into the specific frameworks that creative teams run on, Waterfall, ADDIE, and what happens when those systems track deliverables but forget the humans producing them. We talked about what it looks like to add a human thread to the structure alongside the output thread, so the people inside the system are actually part of what the system is protecting.
We introduced scaffolding as this episode's invisible move, the learning principle that builds people up through temporary support and then gets out of the way. Invisible when it's done right, because the person on the other end feels like they did it themselves.
And in career strategy, we got into what it looks like to design a career you can actually survive long term. Not just get through, survive and keep loving. The depletion signature, structural boundaries, protecting the root, building recovery in on purpose.
And then we finished the conversation with Dustin Power. 2 episodes, 1 story, the whole thing earned the room it took.
His final answer is the one I'm still thinking about. Make cool stuff. Know what you love. Focus on that. 3 sentences from someone who built the infrastructure that's reshaping creative production. And his advice from right there inside it is, the creativity was always the point.
Everything else is just in the way of that, or in service of it. There's not really a third option.
We want to hear from you on this one. What are the systems in your work that are getting in the way? And what are you doing about it? Are you inside a structure that's protecting you or one that's slowly draining you? Tell us on X at Follow EMPath or on Facebook at Entertainment Media Path Podcast. We're reading everything.
Next week, we're getting into the freelance reality. Not the romanticized version, the actual one. What it costs, what it pays back, what the data says is happening right now, and what creatives who've made the jump wish they'd known before they did.
Given everything we've talked about today, the people leaving structures that weren't designed for them, that felt like the only right episode to follow this one with.
It's a natural next step. New episodes every Wednesday at 7 a.m. Find us on any podcast platform. Search EMPath Podcast.
And if you're a brand looking to reach creatives who are actively investing in their careers and their craft, sponsorship details are in the show notes. Reach us directly at info@neonalchemy.nl.
This episode was brought to you by Neon Alchemy.
Story is how companies become human. We handle that part.
EMPath.
Feel the creativity.
The path gets clearer 1 week at a time. This is EMPath.
EMPath is a partner podcast of Neon Alchemy BV. Story is how companies become human. We handle that part.